These books, Heaven Official's Blessing, is a really good example, in my opinion, of why I just don't think AI books are actually going to take off in a way that's going to be, take over the book industry. And here's why. First things first, before I delve into this topic about Heaven Official's Blessings, different editions that I now have, I'd like to preface that this idea that I'm sharing isn't fully fleshed out. This is an idea that honestly really drove my decision to purchase the deluxe edition of Heaven Official's Blessing Book 1, and I'm actually going to collect all 8 of the books in the hardback, even though I already own them in paperback. So I'd like to preface, I am not claiming that this idea I'm sharing is A, unique, or B, fully fleshed out as a logic. It's just what drove my initial thought process to make these purchases, and I thought I would share and see what you all think about it. I think one of the things that's so cool and unique about Heaven Official's Blessing is the fact that it comes in different mediums. So we have the novels, both the hardcover and the paperback, which have different cover art design, and we also have the webcomic series that is now coming out in hardback as well, which I have also collected. There is also the box set of the manhwa that I think is based off of the art style of the animation for Heaven Official's Blessing as well. So there is actually a ton of different ways of getting this story to the reader, the consumer, the viewer, the person who is enjoying this narrative. So I think right off the bat, one of the things that really draws my attention to that is I just don't see a AI book ever leading to that level of financial investment and attention-driven action by people who love the series. I don't see it happening. One of the big key things that is really important to me about this series and really unique is the cultural aspect. Heaven Official's Blessing was originally written in Mandarin Chinese in China, which currently has censorship laws with regards to what can be written about and what can be portrayed in webcomic and animation form. Now, I do hope that those censorship laws get dealt with down the line, but I will say it adds a cultural significance to the way the story is told and comes across. Now, I don't like the fact that these censorship laws prevent certain things, especially when it comes to LGBTQ representation. That's really problematic and frustrating. I do love, however, how much this story rests in yearning as like the dominant driving emotional experience. And I find that so enriching. But again, that experience of yearning isn't existing in a vacuum because a computer wrote a story that is, plug in the word, I want a yearning story, and then boom, there you have it. This is coming from a cultural aspect of a censorship law system that currently exists and is impacting the writing and other presentations of Heaven Official's Blessing. It gives more dimension to this story and reading experience. Now, why did this also cultural component affect my decision to buy the hardcover editions for Heaven Official's Blessing when I already own all the paperbacks and I actually prefer the paperbacks more? Well, the big driving factor for why I'm also deciding to invest the like $180 it's going to cost to buy all of these in hardcover has to do with the sprayed edge art. Now, what is really cool and really unique about these editions is that the sprayed edge art is going to be presented from a right to left pattern, which is actually kind of like reverse or opposite of my standard English initially written in English books. That is like this cool, unique element for Heaven Official's Blessing, and I think it's based on the change in language. The fact that these are translated from Chinese to English, and in Chinese, I know that there's a bit of a mix between whether or not you read left to right or right to left in modern Chinese versus a traditional writing structure. Is it written horizontally or is it written vertically, and all that complexity. But did you just hear what just happened? I'm talking about the complexity of the original written language that these books came in, and then they were translated, and all of those like additional elements are in place, and now we have these interesting sprayed art spines that are going in reverse order to a standard English style book. It adds uniqueness to my shelf. It adds a level of diversity to my shelf, which I just think is really enriching and really awesome. And again, it's all based in reality. These books are not themselves nonfiction books. They are fiction tales, but they're written by an author who exists in reality, who exists in a culture, and that culture is impacting the way the story is told, and it's also impacting the visual presentation of these books. Another example of this for Heaven Official's Blessing is with book 4. I think this cover is amazing. It's one of the reasons why I wanted the paperbacks, because but also, again, censorship laws. I just read up and watched these videos with regards to the fact that censorship laws, I believe in Russia, made it so that this cover was not approved. That's really interesting. Again, there's an element of this that needs to be seriously discussed with the frustration of banning or not permitting certain LGBTQ visual images as if they are going to, poison the minds of our youth and all the ridiculous homophobia and problematic stuff that comes from that. But what I think is really interesting is this cover now has so many more elements of cultural nuance importance beyond just what we see. So, and again, for reference, the artist, I believe the original artist of this cover, went and remade this cover to be a little, less explicit, I guess. Oh my gosh. And they created this cover. It's still, I don't think, passed for censorship laws in Russia, which is really frustrating. But it's also really interesting that, again, this human impact experience of the original artist coming in, redoing the art to try to deal with censorship laws that exist in the realm of reality that we're all dealing with. It adds context, so much more enriching of the story behind the story, the rest of the world's lived experience of Heaven Official's Blessing. Now, taking those ideas and applying them to AI just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. I definitely agree with the idea that, especially with ebooks, that putting out ebook AI books are probably going to be a lot easier than getting print editions out, especially because, again, are people actually going to be investing this heavily in print books that they know are just written by a computer? By the time I've completed gathering like all of the Heaven Official Blessing hardcovers, as well as already the paperbacks, as well as the manhwa original comic art that is coming out, on top of the art book that I've already purchased and all of the gorgeous art that's in this, I'm going to have spent so much money on this series, a series that I really thoroughly love and enjoy, and that's why I'm really engaging in this much financial spending for this series. I cannot conceptually imagine ever investing any money in an AI book because it feels fake and obviously stolen as concepts and ideas, but more so also the complete hollowness of an AI book. An AI book feels like it is separate from reality because it doesn't have an author who is experiencing their own lived experience, both within their own familial structure and lived structure, but also their cultural structure and how those cultural elements are impacting how they're writing the story, how they're telling the story, how they're promoting the story, the way that the story is physically available for readers. Like all of those additional lived real world experiences require the human experience behind them to make them enriched. Otherwise, it's just hollow. It's just hollow. And that hollow experience doesn't translate to value. It doesn't translate to intrinsic financial worth or emotional connectivity from the readers to what they're reading. It's just kind of flat, in my opinion. When it comes to my bookshelves, there's so many authors on these shelves that I've either fallen in love with myself or I just have read one or two of their books and I'm just like, I'm going to purchase every book that this author publishes because the person themselves becomes interesting to me. I watch all of the Brandon Sanderson weekly updates because I care about this interesting person talking about how he is creating his literary art and what he's doing there. That's really interesting to me. One of my favorite youth authors that I still love to read is Julie Kagawa, who wrote the Iron Face series and wrote The Immortal Rules, which I think is called the Blood of Eden series. Also Shadow and the Fox, which I read as an adult, loved it. What I think is so fun about that author is that she's also a YouTuber who does gaming videos. That's such an enriched, interesting thing about this author writing these different books. It's also really cool because each of those different books exists in the fantasy genre, but in different ways. So the Iron Face series is very, unseelie, seelie, fae type court. The Blood of Eden series is very vampires and dystopian. Shadow of the Fox is fantasy that exists in a feudal era Japan type style. But the big thing across all these is it's by the same author, and I'm invested in that author, along with the stories that they're telling. When it comes to Heaven Official's Blessing, I'm invested in this author. I've already put on my TBR all of her other books for the 2 other series that are included, and I've started watching the animation for Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. Because I loved Heaven Official's Blessing, I immediately went to this author's other creations because it comes from this author. That kind of bouncing around in different series and buying up different series and following and loving the authors, the people, in my opinion, again, is this reflection of the value of the story behind the stories, the people behind what is written. It's not just what's on the page. It's not just the text that's important. It's who the author is, what culture they're coming from, when was this written, what's the importance of that, what is the contextual importance of where this is being written, and why that contextual importance impacts our reading experience of this story. All of those elements, all those human elements are what enriches the reading experience, this hobby for me in general. It adds and adds and adds. So even if I took away my general just disgust with the concept of stolen AI art and stolen AI book writing, which is just, even separate from that experience, the fact that AI writes a book means that that book exists outside of all of this enriching external impact for the story, because it's a hodgepodge stealing from other people's stories, other people's experiences, other cultures, the lack of consistency, but also just like there's nothing to talk about beyond what's written on the word, like on the pages. There's nothing more. It's so shallow, it's so hollow, and I cannot conceivably imagine that ever taking off in a way that leads to something extremely financially beneficial. Because how could it? You know, again, by the time I finish with everything I've purchased from this author, the probably over the hundreds of dollars that I will have committed towards this author, towards her series, and that I will have happily committed because I love her writing. I love these stories. I absolutely adore the art that's presented, and I respect the humans, the people behind them. I love the fact that the webcomic manhwa is, you know, digitally represented in this comic form, and yet the comic is slightly different, just slightly, from the original story. That's enriching. That is development more so beyond just the story that's told. It makes it rich, it makes it full, it makes it worth the financial cost of acquiring these books and the amount of time it takes to read all of them as well. So again, as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not claiming that this idea is fully fleshed out or the best idea to work against the existence of AI books. I'm not claiming any of that, but it is the driving reason. When I was trying to decide whether or not to also collect Heaven Official's Blessing in hardcover, the driving reason was looking at this edition and thinking to myself, this is why AI books are never going to be successful, in my opinion, and just feeling my absolute love and enjoyment of the cultural nuance that is Heaven Official's Blessing and my experience as somebody not from that original culture that this was written in and how unique that experience is. It's so enriched. So not claiming that it's the perfect argument ever, but I just thought I would share and again show off my absolutely beautiful collection of Heaven Official's Blessing. So these are going to totally be making up the rest of my videos for a while because this is my new current obsession. Yay! Keep reading what you love, and I will see you next time.